12 actresses from the golden period who tragically lost their beauty. They were everlasting, youthful, and radiant when they were captured on film. The actresses of Hollywood's golden period were the epitome of beauty for millions of spectators. Their splendor seemed to last forever, and their faces were larger than life. However, the cameras gradually came to a halt. The spotlights went out. And these legendary women had to deal with something far more terrible than any drama they had ever acted out: losing the same beauty that had made them unique. Today, we're delving into the tragic tales of 12 iconic actresses whose beautiful appearances were taken away by tragedy, disease, addiction, mental health issues, and last-ditch efforts to hold on to what was vanishing. Over decades, some changes occurred gradually. Others arrived with startling abruptness. However, every tale exposes the harsh contradiction at the core of Hollywood. An industry that relentlessly destroyed women who possessed beauty while worshipping it. Possibly the most heartbreaking beauty disaster Hollywood has ever witnessed is our number 2 entry. Even seasoned industry insiders find it difficult to talk about this tragic subject. These are not merely stories of vanity or aging. It's underlying human dramas about worth, identity, and what happens when the image captured on film no longer reflects the face in the mirror. For the majority of us, aging occurs quietly and in solitude, a process we manage without external criticism. However, for the most attractive women in Hollywood, aging meant witnessing their most valuable professional asset deteriorate under the harsh scrutiny of fans, reviewers, and studio executives who had made their fortunes off of their flawless appearances. There was a huge psychological cost. When your whole identity and means of support are based on how you look, what happens if that appearance changes drastically? How do you handle it when the very thing that set you apart and defined you in the eyes of the public starts to wane? These questions elicited wildly disparate responses from the 12 women who were going to meet. Some used every weapon in their arsenal to battle against time. Others completely withdrew from public view. Some had to deal with issues that went far beyond typical aging, such as mental illness, addiction, and health crises that destroyed their renowned beauty from the inside out. Their tales serve as more than a warning about the cost of celebrity. These are incredibly relatable stories about women who are stuck in an awful situation and must watch helplessly as their most treasured possession disappears under the most trying conditions. Both of us are aware that we are married. Is there not a term for it? Hedy Lamarr, to start. When beauty couldn't be saved by genius. Hedy Lamarr's beauty was so remarkable when she first came in Hollywood in the late 1930s that it almost seemed unreal, as though someone had painted a flawless face and then somehow made it come to life. She was more than just pretty, with her symmetrical features, glowing skin, and captivating dark eyes. She resembled an alien. She was marketed as the world's most beautiful woman by Louis B. Mayer, the influential head of MGM. It's a basic reality, not hyperbole. The classical precision of Lamarr's beauty was what set it apart. Lamarr had the kind of perfect symmetry that went beyond fads and styles, unlike many Hollywood celebrities who had unique appearances or distinguishing traits. Her facial dimensions were then examined by mathematicians, who discovered that they nearly precisely matched the traditional golden ratio, which has been used to describe ideal beauty throughout history and across cultural boundaries. In films like White Cargo, Samson and Delilah, and Aylers, this remarkable beauty was portrayed as an almost mesmerizing presence. With any other actress, the camera would have seemed overly focused on her face. Just by being in the same frame as her, co-stars frequently complained that they felt overshadowed. George Sanders, an actor, famously said, "When Hedy walked onto a set, everything else disappeared." However, Lamarr had a secret that not many people in Hollywood were aware of. One of the brightest minds in the entertainment business was hiding behind that flawless face. In her free time between films, the self-taught inventor worked on a variety of projects before co-developing and patenting a frequency-hopping technology that prevented Nazi forces from jamming Allied torpedo signals during World War II. This groundbreaking invention would later serve as the basis for the GPS, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi technology that is currently used by billions of people. Lamarr should have been equipped to handle the inevitable difficulties of aging with poise and perspective thanks to this amazing combination of unmatched beauty and extraordinary brains. Rather, it paved the way for one of the most catastrophic downturns in Hollywood history. Due to the industry's disinterest in letting its most attractive lady age gracefully on screen, Lamar's parts started to decline as she approached her 40s and 50s. This was not because her talent had declined. Formerly vying for her services, studios now passed her by in favor of younger actors. Once respectful, the media started making disparaging remarks about her beauty. This rejection was painful for a lady whose identity had been so entwined with her attractiveness. In contrast to several actors who pursued careers as producers, directors, or businesswomen, Lamar had mostly concealed her intellectual prowess out of concern that it would diminish her reputation. She famously stated that any female might be glamorous. You only need to remain motionless and appear foolish. Now, her scientific accomplishments remained unacknowledged and her beauty was waning, and her groundbreaking patent had expired before it could be used commercially. Lamar was experiencing an identity crisis. She responded by resorting to cosmetic surgery. However, starting in the 1960s, Lamar had numerous plastic procedures done by physicians utilizing antiquated techniques, in an era before contemporary techniques had been created. The outcomes paled in comparison to the slight improvements that contemporary celebrities receive. Her formerly flawless features started to appear distorted and stretched. Even worse, she started to believe that she could enhance these expert practices on her own. In her later years, Lamar started doing her own cosmetic touch-ups, injecting herself with different substances, making her own face masks, and even trying small surgical repairs, according to people close to her. The outcome was catastrophic. The once mathematically flawless visage was nearly unrecognizable due to distortion. Lamar had turned inward by the 1970s, rarely going out in public and turning down the majority of photos. The contrast between her current look and her classic beauty was startling on the few occasions when she was photographed. Her previously flawless features appeared to have melted and changed, looking very different from the visage that had enthralled millions of people. Lamar lived in a tiny Florida flat in near total seclusion throughout the last years of his life. She maintained contacts with her children and a few close friends, but she avoided face-to-face interactions whenever possible. She mostly used the telephone to speak with the outside world. Few people had seen her face in years when she passed away in 2000 at the age of 85. The harsh irony of Lamar's narrative is that her bright mind was discovered too late to provide her with a different identity from the beauty that had previously defined her. Lamar didn't start to get significant recognition and appreciation for her groundbreaking work in frequency hopping technology until the 1990s, when she was in her 80s. She was eventually given the Pioneer Award from the Electronic Frontier Foundation in 1997, but she was too withdrawn to go to the event. Instead, her son accepted it on her behalf. According to one technology historian, she created the technology that made Wi-Fi possible, but she was unable to restore her waning beauty. It is a heartbreakingly accurate portrayal of a woman whose talents went well beyond the flawless appearance that ended up serving as her jail. Hold on, you're doing it again. I apologize, but I'm not familiar with that aspect of the procedure. Rita Worth, number 2. When beauty goes crazy. Rita Hayworth's iconic moment of tossing back her gorgeous auburn hair in Gilda, which was so famous that it was actually painted on the side of an atomic bomb, could be considered the quintessential image of glamour from Hollywood's golden age. Worth was the quintessential 1940s sex icon, combining sensuality with a surprising fragility that made viewers care about her rather than merely want her. Millions of people dreamed of her because of her flawless heart-shaped face, renowned red hair, and elegant dancer's body. During World War II, soldiers stored her pinup in their barracks, lockers, and submarines. At the height of her fame, nothing appeared to be able to take away from Worth's remarkable beauty. Worth maintained her beauty well into her 30s and early 40s, when many actresses started to worry about how long they would live. Critics noted that she had grown gracefully without losing the attributes that made her unique, and films such as Pal Joey 1957 showed a woman still in complete control of her famous attraction. However, something unsettling was starting to take place behind the scenes. Worth and those around her didn't completely comprehend. Little mishaps on the set in the late 1950s were the beginning of it. Worth, who was formerly renowned for her remarkable professionalism and memory, started to have trouble with her lines. She would forget talks from earlier in the day or seem perplexed by basic stage instructions. Many, including Worth, blamed these issues on stress, fatigue, or her growing dependence on drink to soothe her anxiety. But by the early 1960s, it was hard to overlook the problems. Crew personnel noted that Worth occasionally froze in the middle of a scene when filming The Money Trap in 1965, her iconic face displaying a genuine look of bewilderment. It would be necessary to gently remind her of her location and her purpose. Later, director Burt Kennedy said that he had to plan the shoot around these outbursts in order to account for Worth's increasingly erratic mental state. As these cognitive problems grew worse, they started to have minor but discernible effects on Worth's appearance. Her face started to lose the vivid expressions that had made it so appealing on film. Her renowned grace of movement grew shaky and unsure. Her eyes were the most telling. They were formerly so animated and expressive, but now they showed more and more anxiety and bewilderment. The general population was unaware of the situation. During her infrequent public appearances in the late 1960s and early 1970s, gossip columnists frequently implied that Worth was intoxicated or under the influence of narcotics. Unflattering pictures of her with empty eyes or obese bodies were published in fan magazines, along with questions about Rita's whereabouts. At the moment, nobody understood what had happened to Rita. She was only in her 50s when she was struck by early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Years after Worth started exhibiting symptoms, Alzheimer's disease wasn't generally acknowledged until the 1980s. Worth was alone and terrified as she dealt with her deteriorating cognitive abilities without a diagnosis or any knowledge of what was happening to her. Princess Yasmin Akin, her daughter, later wrote about this time. She would repeatedly ask the same things when she called me 5 or 6 times a day. She was aware that something was seriously up, but she was clueless as to what it was. Her voice was heartbreakingly afraid. Worth's renowned beauty was more affected by the illness as it worsened. Her capacity to take care of herself was impacted by the illness. Without help, basic grooming became difficult, then impossible. She lost track of meals or was unable to recall if she had eaten, which caused her weight to vary significantly. Dark bags under her eyes, deepening lines, and a constantly worried expression were physical manifestations of the stress of her confusing mental state. Photographers who succeeded in capturing Worth's image by the middle of the 1970s revealed a woman who was nearly unrecognizable from the vivid beauty of just 10 years before. Her formerly flawless features appeared to have mysteriously fallen apart, leaving her expressions blank. What was most remarkable was the change in her eyes. A deep emptiness that was far more painful than any typical aging process could account for now reflected in the windows of her personality. Worth's growing realization in her moments of clarity that something valuable was vanishing was the most tragic part of her deterioration. Not only was she beautiful, but she was herself. She reportedly shook her head in shock when told it was her after whispering, "Who is that? Who is that beautiful girl?" after seeing an old press shot during one of her rare moments of clarity in the late 1970s. When Worth's illness was ultimately identified as Alzheimer's in 1980, she became one of the first well-known people to be linked to the then unknown illness. Through her mother's tale, her daughter became a vocal supporter of Alzheimer's research and care, raising much-needed awareness of the illness. Worth needed full-time care for the last few years of her life because she couldn't even identify her close relatives or understand her legendary status. She had been practically absent from her own life for almost 10 years when she passed away in 1987 at the age of 68. Rita Hayworth's story is especially tragic because her beauty wasn't merely diminished by aging or harmed by bad decisions. It was methodically destroyed by a sickness that took away not just her physical attributes but also her memories, character, and core self. Worth lost the very intellect that had animated her lovely face with intelligence and charm, whereas other actresses on our list lost their appearance due to time or circumstances. People thought she was drunk, one of her last carers noted. But she was losing her mind. In this observation lies the true tragedy, not just the loss of extraordinary beauty, but the complete erasure of the person behind it, one memory at a time. My King 3. Gloria Graham. The self-destructive pursuit of perfection. Gloria Graham entered Hollywood with something rarer than conventional beauty. She possessed genuine distinctiveness with her slightly pouty upper lip, knowing eyes, and sultry voice. She embodied the film noir femme fatale to perfection. Though never considered a classical beauty like Elizabeth Taylor or Grace Kelly, Graham projected something perhaps more valuable, an unforgettable sensuality that made her stand out in films like The Bad and the Beautiful, for which she won an Oscar, The Big Heat, and In a Lonely Place. What many viewers didn't realize was that Graham's most distinctive feature, that slightly pouty upper lip that gave her a perpetually provocative expression, was an obsession for the actress herself. Despite its effectiveness on screen, Graham viewed her upper lip as a flaw rather than an asset. This fixation would eventually lead to one of Hollywood's most notorious beauty disasters. In the early 1950s, at the height of her fame, Graham began experimenting with ways to make her upper lip fuller. According to Hollywood legend, she started by stuffing cotton or tissue under her lip to create the illusion of added plumpness. This temporary solution satisfied her for a while, but eventually she sought something more permanent. The plastic surgery techniques of the 1950s were primitive by today's standards. Modern lip augmentation using safe temporary fillers didn't exist. When Graham decided to surgically enhance her upper lip, she was entering largely uncharted territory, especially since she reportedly kept the procedure secret from studios, directors, and even her doctors. Rather than seeking a comprehensive treatment plan from a single qualified surgeon, Graham allegedly underwent multiple small procedures from different doctors, none of whom knew about the other's work. Some reports suggest she even attempted amateur enhancements herself, using various substances to plump her lip. The results were disastrous. By the late 1950s, observers began to notice something odd about Graham's appearance. Her once distinctive mouth now looked unnatural. The upper lip disproportionately swollen with visible scarring around the edges. Worse, the muscle movement appeared restricted, giving her a slightly frozen expression that limited her ability to convey emotion on screen. Directors began to notice that lighting Graham became increasingly challenging. Her altered lip created unusual shadows on her face, and certain angles made the unnatural appearance of her mouth even more pronounced. Cinematographers developed special techniques to film her, typically using soft focus and strategic lighting to minimize the visible damage. As her appearance continued to deteriorate, Graham's career opportunities narrowed. The actress who had once been nominated for multiple Academy Awards now found herself relegated to minor roles in B-movies or television guest appearances where the lighting could be controlled. By the 1960s, her once promising career had largely collapsed. The true extent of Graham's surgical modifications became apparent in her final film roles in the 1970s. The distinctive face that had made her a noir icon was now barely recognizable. Her upper lip appeared permanently swollen and misshapen with visible scarring and an unnatural rigidity that affected her speech. The sensual expression that had been her trademark had been replaced by what one critic cruelly described as a permanent grimace. What makes Graham's story particularly tragic is the irony at its heart. In trying to enhance her most distinctive feature, she destroyed the very quality that had made her special. Had she left her slightly imperfect lip alone, she might have continued a successful career into middle age and beyond, as her contemporary Bette Davis did. Instead, her attempt to achieve an impossible standard of perfection left her unable to work in an industry that valued uniqueness but demanded flawlessness. In her final years, Graham became increasingly reclusive, aware of the stark contrast between her current appearance and her screen image. Friends reported that she would only agree to meet in dimly lit restaurants or her darkened apartment where the changes to her face were less visible. She refused most photographs and rarely gave interviews. When she died in 1981 at the relatively young age of 57, many obituaries made cruel references to her altered appearance. Some even suggesting that her vanity had destroyed her career. These assessments missed the deeper tragedy. Graham wasn't the architect of her downfall, but a victim of an industry that simultaneously valued her uniqueness while making her feel deeply insecure about it. 9. Mae West, the caricature of eternal youth. Mae West built her career on being something entirely different from the typical Hollywood beauty. With her curvaceous figure, suggestive delivery, and boundary-pushing sexuality, she created a persona that was less about physical perfection and more about irresistible confidence. Her famous quips like, "When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better," established her as a woman who made her own rules about beauty as much as anything else. In her prime during the 1930s, West was never conventionally beautiful by Hollywood standards. Already in her 40s, when she made her most famous films like She Done Him Wrong and I'm No Angel, she possessed a mature sensuality that contrasted sharply with the youthful innocence of contemporaries like Loretta Young or Claudette Colbert. With her platinum blonde hair, heavily defined features, and voluptuous figure, West created a stylized image that was instantly recognizable and enormously appealing to audiences. This distinctive, highly cultivated appearance positioned West uniquely among Hollywood stars. Because her look was already artificial, the result of careful styling rather than natural features, she initially seemed better equipped than most actresses to handle the challenges of aging. Unlike stars whose appeal depended on youthful beauty that would inevitably fade, West's carefully constructed persona should have been adaptable to her advancing years. But West made a fateful decision that would ultimately transform her from a sex symbol to something approaching self-parody. She refused to acknowledge aging at all. Rather than allowing her image to evolve with her years, she attempted to freeze time, maintaining exactly the same appearance decade after decade, regardless of her actual age. The first signs of this refusal to adapt appeared in the 1940s when West was in her 50s. While most actresses her age were transitioning to more mature roles with appropriate styling, West continued to present herself exactly as she had in her 40s. The same platinum blonde hair, heavily made-up eyes, and revealing costumes designed to showcase her figure. Initially, this consistency was simply part of her brand, a refusal to bow to conventional expectations about how women should age. But as West entered her 60s and beyond, her commitment to her youthful image took on an increasingly desperate quality. The makeup that had once defined her features now seemed to mask them entirely. The platinum blonde hair maintained through increasingly obvious wigs contrasted sharply with her aging skin. The revealing costumes that had once showcased genuine curves now covered a body that required extensive corsetry to approximate her former silhouette. By the time West returned to films with Myra Breenage, 1970, and Sex It, 1978, when she was 77 and 85 years old, respectively, the disparity between her cultivated image and her physical reality had become extreme. Close-ups revealed heavy makeup caked in the natural lines of age, creating an almost mask-like appearance. Her movements, once fluid and suggestive, had become stiff and careful. Most jarring was the disconnect between her age and the sexually charged dialogue she continued to deliver with the same suggestive intonation she had used decades earlier. Critics were merciless about these late-career appearances.